That's in the game. We really ain't playing. We in the Slack chat where that coach comes breathe. We be releasing these buzzers about the top of the pop. We know live when we hit the block. Gas. You can see it. Helmet. First, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets. Got blurred vision. We got too many. Oh no. They got us fucked up. Army. We play Jones that have that edge. We don't fight one shot. Competition just drop. We lock and loaded on 4 block. Whatever the time. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires learning and outwork of competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another DFS Army WolfPack Roundtable Breakdown. We're going to take a look at the Week 9 NFL slate, mostly from an MME perspective. How are we going to attack the Millie Maker? How are we going to attack some mass multi-entry contests? How are we going to attack some big tournaments? I got Statsational, John Alessia, with me as always, fresh off a couple of 100K wins. No big deal. It's just another week for John. It's regular shit. What's up, John?
What's going on, man?
Oh, I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling real good. And we've got Burns, the Millie Maker specialist himself, in the house, a mathematical superstar. What's up, Burns?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
All right. And we are coming off a Bobby Wow second Millie Maker takedown last night in the showdown. I was...
Sick.
Second Millie Maker.
Well.
You know who's a little salty? John got knocked out of first place. Sorry, man.
It happens. I managed to fall asleep. I was fine.
You fell asleep after? All right, that's good. I'm glad to hear you were able to sleep.
Before
we get started.
With the help of some drugs, but THC. Legal drugs, man. Medical marijuana.
Unbelievable. Before we get started, we got to call the WolfPack together. Call the Wild. WolfPack assemble. Burns' dog is going crazy in the background. My cat just ran out of the room. She's like, I don't want none of that smoke. That is not a sound I want to be around. She's gone. All right, guys. Let's talk Week 9. An interesting one. Every week is interesting. Last week, we went back to this crazy situation where there were almost like no games to target. And it was really weird. And there was weather everywhere. There's horrible weather. Weather messes me up. Burns, I don't know what the hell to do. I got to tell you, those wind weeks, the weather that has never worked out well for me personally, ever. I don't know if I should fade the game, if I had to play it, ignore it. If I ignore it, it mattered. If I fade it, they go off. I don't know what the hell to do in these weather games. At this point, I accept it. I have no clue.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to think of it either. The wind, the weather got me off of the Cleveland game, still stayed on the running game, and that was a friggin' farce right there. Kareem Hunt in such a great spot. Screwed many lineups for many, many people, including myself and including many of our members. And, no fault of ours. It was a great spot,
Again, we like the wind. It's fine. They're going to run more, but they're going to score less. So, there's a balance. There's a balance there. They're going to run more. There's a score less. It doesn't always work out that great. Now, we talked about pivoting over to Dalvin Cook right here on the WolfPack last week as an interesting, pivot off of some higher owned, chalkier plays like Derrick Henry. Everybody's going to be at Derrick Henry but my goodness, I hope. Wow, Dalvin Cook went nuts, and that pivot. And there's something like that again this week that we could talk about. Another situation, but Derrick Henry's spot looked so great, it was hard to pivot off.
Yeah, that was a beautiful pivot. I mean, Dalvin Cook who saw that coming with the 4 touchdowns? So
WolfPack, he heard it.
yeah, you need to record that one.
No, that's not wolves, man. That's just barking dogs. It's totally different. That's the pack of hounds. But then I can say Dalvin Cook was in a win game. So it didn't work for Hunt. Why did it work for Dalvin Cook? What the hell's going on? So you know what I'm saying? Like that's why it's so crazy. It's really, really hard to predict these things. And sometimes you just have to, and John has the approach of he doesn't give a shit. He's just gonna play a little bit of all those guys. And hey, it works out, it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, that's probably how you're doing it.
Yeah, certainly when you're MME, but yeah, like my high stakes lineup looked probably just as bad as everybody else's. I had Hunt in there. I didn't use Cook in my high stakes. I used Jimmy G, which a lot of people did with Kittle. So I mean, it just couldn't get much worse. But that's just the way it is sometimes.
Hindsight, that high stakes lineup was way too obvious and should have been pivoted off.
Yeah,
it was just too obvious. And it didn't work, but it was so obvious.
Yeah, I fell victim to Garoppolo too. It was cash catastrophe, man. I'm telling you. All in my cash lineups, I had Jimmy G in it. I don't know how I still managed to beat a couple of people in cash last week with Jimmy G. I'm like, what's going on here?
Because your opponent played Jimmy G also. If you got the Dolphins defense in there, you won your cash game.
Yep.
Because your opponent also played Jimmy G.
Yeah, what's remarkable is I was able to win the early only with the Colts defense and not the Miami defense, which was as lucky as they did. But I figured, yeah, it's got to be a Miami D. So that's kind of a good lesson. You don't have to have the nuts at every single spot in football. It's sometimes you get lucky with the right combination.
Just a little bit of uniqueness, switch it up a little bit. One of the most important things, and I want to talk about last night also, and Bobby Wow's big win, and also some approaches that you can do. And really, the point I want to look at is like not, and we can. There's a couple of scenarios I'll point out like this where don't be overconfident in your takes is kind of a theme that I think in NFL in particular you have to kind of embrace. And I'm going to bring up a couple situations where this really came to play. Number one, last night in the game, and again, this had nothing to do with last week's main slate, but San Francisco was down all of their wide receivers, so they were bringing in a whole crew of ne'er-do-wells, right? Some names we never heard of. We looked at the group, and we knew that the certainty was this. All right, you've got, the tight end is out, so it's going to be some combination of Reed and Dwelly, fine. Then you've got this group of 3 wide receivers. That's all they were going to have. Taylor, Richie James, and, a guy whose name I already forget, like Chase. I don't remember the third guy. But the primary 2 guys were going to be Taylor and Richie James. Now, Taylor had been getting snaps regularly as part of the 49ers offense, and he appeared to be the most secure role. Richie James had some snaps with the team last season, came off IR, hadn't had a snap this year, but looked to be the WR2. And we got very excited about Taylor and said, hey, for $200 salary on whatever, for mint salary, this is the top guy because he's been getting snaps anyway. Got to load up. But, we looked at Richie James and said, okay, he's going to be out there as well. He's very playable in this spot. So my question is this, though, having overconfidence. So a lot of people said, well, I only played one guy. I didn't play the other guy. I played Taylor. I loaded up on Taylor. I didn't play this other guy. Or I went all in on one side. And so, that reminded me of the situation a little bit of basically what we have every single week with DK Metcalf and Tyrod Taylor, where
Lockett, you mean?
Taylor, fucking Taylor is the other guy. and Lockett. What am I saying? Where every week we're trying to make a decision. We're like, oh, this one's in a better spot. That one, you have you look for any little inkling to lean one way or the other. Yeah. But you could be wrong pretty highly. So the question is, or the philosophical thought is for tournaments, how much weight should we give to either a matchup for one guy versus the other, or a lean one way or the other in these situations? And I really want to hear from both of you guys on how you treat this sort of a situation. So I'll start with you, John. You've got, a team with 2 starting wide receivers, $200 last night, or you've got the DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett question that we always have to answer. And you've identified one guy I want to lean towards a little bit more. Even in Bobby Wow's breakdown last night, he said, I like Taylor a little bit more, but all right, I'll get a little more of him, but I'm going to get exposed to the other guy too, because they're starting wide receivers for $200 on a team, and fuck yeah, I'm going to play that. So he didn't use the F-bomb though, because Bobby Wow would never.
That's why you don't win millions.
I know. God does, the big man doesn't like it when you swear.
That's it, man.
I don't believe he doesn't like it when you swear. He doesn't care about that. But, how do you treat that situation? John, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the more difficult situations. Last night's is tough. I prefer to look at, let's say, like a Lockett, DK Metcalf situation, which like I said, we have that situation every week. We've got it again this week. You don't know. I mean, I can tell you what I did last week. Last week was Lockett. I had more Lockett, even though he was coming off that monster week, but he was like $600 cheaper, right? As far as MMEing, I'm using them both. I if you like the game, I don't see how you could play one more than the other. I mean, if you want to get extremely narrow and you're going to take one guy only with Russ, I mean, okay, but that's just not how I do it. So I like the game. I don't think there's been a week where we haven't liked a Russ situation, a Seattle situation. So in those, I've not been really 50-50. I've been probably 60-40 most weeks, but it's really been based on the cost. So I'm just letting the price dictate to me, because I really can't differentiate between the two in that situation. We've got, I mean, how do you know? We don't know. We can get ourselves in the right situation. That's why I like MMA, and we can get ourselves into the games that we want to get ourselves into. But I don't know what I don't know what the opposing coach is going to do as far as, are they going to try to shut down DK Metcalf and leave Lockett? Is it going to be the reverse? Is the Seattle game plan to go to Lockett this week and not to? We don't know. Other teams, we've got a little bit better sense. So to me, in those situations, that's the advantage of playing MME. If you're in a single lineup situation, you're playing like I do the high stakes, then I got to make a decision. And more often than not, and I made that decision last week. I went with Lockett again, cheaper player of the two, wasn't the right choice, but that's the route I went because I needed to get other guys in. It's going to vary week to week. Can I spend more in certain weeks if I've got really good cheap options? Then maybe I'll go for the more expensive option. But more often than not, I'm going to take the cheaper of the two options and then fill in from there.
Good answer. But what I'm hearing is you don't go all in on one or the other.
I never do. But I never do.
Yeah. How about you, Burns? What do you do in these situations? Do you like, because I know you make fewer lineups, Burns. You're not a 150 lineups guy. You're usually 20 or 30 or 40. How are you treating these situations? Are you allowing your lean, your bias to really dictate heavily which way to go, or just kind of mix it up and say, hey, wide receiver, team, $200. I'm going to play this guy and I'm going to play that guy. I'll play this guy a little more because maybe he's in a better spot. And Lockett, Metcalf, they're both awesome players, but one seems to go off when the other one doesn't. So, I'm gonna make sure that one, if I have a lean, I'll do one Wilson Lockett. I'll do one Wilson Metcalf. I'll do a second Lockett. I'll go 60-40. I'll favor my lean a smidge, but I ain't going crazy with it.
Yeah, I mean, what John said is perfectly right on point. Where with what I am doing with my lineups, he mass multi-enters 150, whereas I'm in the 20 to 40 range, maybe depending on entry cost on the Millie Maker. Could be pushing 50 or 60 lineups. It just depends on that cost per entry. But when it's at this week where it's $20 an entry, I'm more in the 20 to 25 range, not because I can't afford it. It's just I have more success with lower amount of lineups than actually I do with the larger amount of lineups. And that's just basically how I approach things. I know a lot of people will just take a they'll take a single player and then they'll go, they'll put a lot more emphasis on them in 20 lineups. But I take a different approach. Actually, I actually spread across and diversify my risk across a lot more players than a lot of people actually do with smaller amounts of lineups. And actually, to tell you the truth, I think that's a better way to approach it, because you can actually get, say, like, last week with Mahomes. I didn't get on Mahomes until Sunday when I started building my lineups, and I was like, okay, I understand that we have a large line here at 19.5, and I understand that the point total is it's not great, but it's still pretty high, and how are they going to attack this New York Jets defense? The Jets stopped the run. And, Andy Reid's a pretty smart coach. And I'm like thinking, well, they can attack it with Kelsey, they can attack it with Hill, and they can attack it with other wide receivers. And that could be how they win this game and just blow them out and hit that 20-point threshold. At half, it was really close. And that actually held up to the benefit of the game, in that, and it helped Mahomes actually go over that 30-point threshold in DK FPTSs. So I kind of look at things a little differently, I guess. I don't know, go in all in on one play or 2 or 3 plays, even though I am doing 20 lineups. I kind of diversify my risk across, and it came across where Dalvin Cook became more viable, and because of that. So
So let me ask you this: are you actively, number one, writing down your exposures? You're like, all right, I just made a Mahomes lineup. Okay, let me go through it. You're like, and as you're making each lineup, are you actively saying to yourself, all right, I made one before a little chalky with Derrick Henry and Kareem Hunt. Let me kind of do something different here. Maybe I'll go Dalvin Cook and then like some pay down option at running back. Like, are you tracking that on paper? Or are you kind of using your memory?
Yeah, I track it, and I also will take a look at, like last week, a running back that really was in a prime position, even though I didn't utilize him as much as I really needed to or wanted to, was Zach Moss in that Buffalo game. He went off pretty well. I had a few shares of him. I wish I had more, but I didn't get onto him until late, and it was because of how the weather matriculated. Don't get me wrong. I even had a lineup or two with Josh Allen, and I wrote him up in my Millie Maker special stack with the Buffalo defense. The reason why that I made that a play as a Millie Maker special was not because of the throwing situation in that game. It was actually, if Buffalo is going to win that game, they're going to win it with running, and Josh Allen has some of the best legs of any quarterback in the NFL, outside of maybe Lamar Jackson and Mahomes. And
number one is Kyler Murray.
Yeah, there you go too. But
Kyler.
I won't forget him. But that's where I was going with that, is that he could rush for 2 touchdowns. I didn't see the Mahomes explosion happening, but I thought Mahomes could hit projection of 25. So if Josh Allen hits 20, 23, lower cost, with the Buffalo defense, they hold.
Josh Allen has won people many a Millie Maker over the years, and maybe this week. So that's been happening. He's a little slump, but he's won many a Millie Maker, and ignore him at your peril. I mean, the last time, one of the times that you popped into the top 10 was a Josh Allen lineup. I remember it well. So we don't want to ignore him. I think for me, looking at that game again with Mahomes, the highest price guy, really what led to the explosion, not just for him, but why he was so prominent. Of course, listen, circumstances always find their way to a situation. The first circumstance was all the other games really dudded in a lot of ways. So it wasn't just, you're paying all the way up for Mahomes. All these other games just disappointed, or most of them did, outside of Russ Wilson, who also smashed. And by the way, he could have taken down the Millie with Russ at the helm as well. And Russell Wilson was involved in a game that we liked. So
he actually did take down the Millie and the $1,000 entry Millie maker.
there we go. He was involved in a game that we like that had more opportunity to have a little bit of back and forth. So he didn't need Mahomes to win last week. Russ, again, was in it. All of us stupidly played Jimmy Garoppolo and somehow didn't say, you know what? Fucking let me just take the other guy who's so much more consistent in our cash lineup. And instead of paying up for George Kittle, let me just put a turd in a tight end. That would have changed everything. Or had we known at the beginning of the week last week that DJ Dallas was going to be cheat code starting running back guy, that really would have changed everything about how the slate would have been approached. Like we really would have had a 2 cheap, 1 expensive running back approach rather than what we did last week. So, you know, I think, guys, and I hope we're not boring everybody who's watching this right now. I think this stuff to me is much more important than who the players are and what they're going to do this week. Understanding the approach and refining it, and also looking for leakage in our thought process for these games. I mean, I really felt like I found leakage in my personal thought process last night. I went back and said, you know what? Why wasn't I on the WR2 for $400 or for $200 salary more than I was? You know, he had a Q tag, big deal. So why wasn't I on that? It's still a wide receiver. And we also knew that Jair Alexander, not that he went out of the game anyway, but the better cornerback going in was going to be on maybe the other wide receiver. We didn't know who he was going to be on. So, you know, going into that game, we talked about like, oh, Jair Alexander. Now, he got hurt. He left the game. It didn't matter that much. But we went into the game thinking, oh, Jair Alexander, well, they'll probably put it on Taylor because Taylor's been starting. But maybe Taylor's only been starting because Richie James has been out, or maybe it doesn't even matter. You know, remember that Jets game where we all thought it was going to be Chris Hogan or Braxton Berrios, and then this guy Smith comes out of nowhere and puts up 25 points, and you're like, who the fuck is that? Well, that guy just won somebody $1 million on DraftKings.
Devin Smith.
I think the leakage learned here is if there is a wide receiver that's going to be on the field in a game where a team is probably going to have to throw or not, but if he's a wide receiver and he's going to be on the field and we don't really know where the targets are going, put him in the captain. Play him. We don't know. Embrace the uncertainty in those situations. We don't know much more than what we do. And you said something right. We don't know how the coach is going to play it. We don't know what adjustments a coaching staff is going to make. They're going to take one guy out of a game and the other guy looks good. That could happen this weekend. Now, speaking of, I mean, we can get into Lockett and Metcalf and Lockett having a much better matchup this week once again. But it's irrelevant. You know, he will. Yeah, Lockett will have a better matchup this week. DK Metcalf is going to have Tre'Davious White on him, an elite cornerback. Lockett will not. Lockett's in a better. It doesn't matter. DK Metcalf can still catch 1-2 passes and go off and break the slate. It doesn't matter.
That's a shadow situation with DK Metcalf too, with Tre'Davious White. So
yeah, I mean,
he's going to be on him every now and again, and that's going to be 100% on him.
He will be on him 100% of the time. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm saying I like Lockett again this week. Don't get me wrong, but what I'm saying is also if you're doing Russell Wilson stack, that doesn't mean 20 lineups with Wilson should all have Lockett in it. Do 14 and do 6 with the other guy if you're mixing them up. That's what I'm saying. Like, we don't absolutely know. Tre'Davious White can get hurt in game. We don't know what happens. Tre'Davious White, maybe he sucks that day. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, like even David Moore got some run last week too, and he actually made the $1,000 entry Millie maker.
Yeah, I saw it. But I mean, be wary of that. The guy had, like, if you look at the matchups tool, I did look at that, and we have a great tool on DFS Army. And let's start to get into this week's slate, and I'll bring up a tool on screen here. One of the things I like to do during this show is I like to bring up our tools to show how you can use them to understand things about slates. And I love this matchups tool. But all of this information, by the way, is probably also in the research station if you're digging deep. But we came up with this to really, it helps me do my breakdowns each week because I can just pop right on here. And I want to show you something. Because I looked, it's like Seattle's a team we want to get into here. Even last week, and Moore had a pretty good game. He was only on the field for 29% of the snaps. And so that's a little scary to me. Like, fine. In a Russell Wilson stack, get one of those, but be aware that that game is not like super likely to be repeated with just a 20. I don't know what's going on with
but
who they're throwing to or why this guy isn't on the field as much, but he's not.
You remember that Atlanta game last year where David Moore popped off for 2 or 3 touchdowns catches?
Yeah.
He did the same thing last year, and it was then everybody jumped on board David Moore, and then he dudded the following week. So
yeah, it's almost a lock that he's going to dud, after that. So I wouldn't, I want to jump all over it. But when you're making stacks using the correlated stacking system, it's going to pop one of those in there anyway. Like, you just watch and you just kind of make sure that you could look in the correlations box, in the combinations box and see. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this week as we're starting to get into it. And I'm going to pop on let's see. Let's go through the domination station and look at some of these games just as a whole. Now, again, we've got another situation, and I think I don't know if I call it a sneaky game, but another situation with Mahomes where they're pretty heavy favorites, not as heavy as before. Defense not going to be able to do that much to stop them with the Panthers. 52.5-point game total. The only problem here is the same problem I always have with Mahomes every single week, which is I don't really know who to stack him with. Is it Kelsey? Is it Hill? Is it Mecole Hardman? Is it all three? I don't know. But I like him here, and if you could afford it, the comeback with Christian McCaffrey looks very interesting to me.
What's the word on McCaffrey? I know in the Dom station he's not projected particularly high. I'm hearing today that now he's going to be playing, but
it'll come up, that projection.
That's what I'm assuming. The projection is going to increase there. So yeah, that's a pretty pricey. It's a pretty pricey stack, of course, going Mahomes with any of his guy, unless you go with one of the cheaper wide receiver options to come back with CMC. I'm curious to where his ownership is going to be this week, considering first week back against the Chiefs.
CMC is a situation I broke down extensively. I was really into this situation because I feel like it's the exact same setup as we saw last week with Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, right? Derrick Henry they're about the same price. Henry a little bit more. Dalvin Cook, we knew Henry was going to be the chalk. We knew that Dalvin Cook is in a very good situation. So, I mean, right now, if I look at the projected ownership, we've got Dalvin Cook at 23% versus 10% for McCaffrey. So much, much higher projected ownership, more than double for Dalvin Cook compared to Christian McCaffrey. Now, a phenomenon that I feel like we've seen this season, and I don't know if it's just in my head or it's real, but that people coming off of injury have done very well. Players, we all shy away. He's got the Q tag. Is he going to play? And then when they play the whole game and they play well. And I'll remind you of situations. Mike Williams on that showdown slate smashed that game. Devontae Adams in a return game destroyed it.
I think
even Aaron Jones last night had a good workload.
Well, we've talked about this. My opinion on when it comes to injuries, if they're on the field, there's no injury, right? They're not putting them out there if they can't play. So otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy, because how else are you going to figure out? We're not examining these guys. So you tell me he's playing, and barring them telling me something, where he's on a strict 20 snap count, something like that. As far as I'm concerned, they're 100% healthy and they're ready to go. So I just view it that way. I'm not going to drive myself nuts trying to sort through injuries. If they're putting them on the field, they can play.
So, I mean, with that philosophy in mind, and I agree with that. Outside of those times like Leonard Fournette, when he was going to play only because they had no other running backs on the Bucs that day, and they were very clear. They're like, he's just here. He's not going to actually get snaps. We're just going to make him active in case of emergency. But so now knowing that, and you could get Christian McCaffrey at $300 more than Dalvin Cook at lower ownership. And if it's vintage Christian McCaffrey, the standard Christian McCaffrey who scores 26 points in a bad game, 40 in a good game, is that sharp leverage I mean, I know it is. Feel a very sharp leverage off of Dalvin Cook, who's also in a spectacular smash spot. It is. It's definitely. So yeah, I love that situation. So looking at this game, I don't really like too much else that's going on with it personally. You know, you could find Mahomes again, very expensive, hard to make stacks, and it's McCaffrey on the Panthers. I think he negates a lot of the goodness that we've seen out of some of these wide receivers. Not to mention that Kansas City's secondary has been elite to the point where no one is scoring well against them, even in games where they're down massive. But let's talk about some other games that might be interesting for stacks this week. John, which of these games are you really focused on or liking a lot here? Give me some combinations that interest you.
Well, I mean, the obvious games. It's I'm always looking to see where Seattle's playing. I think that's a great spot this week. So, gonna be a lot of stacks there. I did my stacks earlier today. They're up on DFS Army, and I believe that was the number one.
Russell Lockett, number one. Allen Diggs, number 2. Russell DK Metcalf. This is, by the way, speaking more to what we just said before. Like, just because Lockett's in a better spot, it doesn't mean that don't play DK Metcalf.
Yeah,
play him too.
Actually, that actually brings me to. So I was thinking about when you were speaking before about that whole situation, and having preconceived notions, maybe, or you go in with a bias before you start making your lineups, which we all do. I mean, because we are familiar with the games, we're familiar with the players, and you're going to go in with a bias. Be careful when you're looking at these projections and everything. You know, what's really the big difference, especially in a GPP, between a guy projected 19 points and another guy projected 17 and a half points. I mean, we're not talking huge numbers, but what winds up happening is we'll look at it and we're like, well, you know, either Lockett or Metcalf, and he's projected more, so that's the guy I'm definitely going to go with, and I'm going to go heavy with that guy. It's like these, projections aren't perfect. We're getting them, we're on the whole, they're going to be pretty good, but they're not exactly perfect. Don't tie yourself into one particular stack or one particular player because it's slightly better. When you're looking at something like you've got up on the screen here, just because Wilson Lockett's number one doesn't mean you have to play. There might be some other reasons. Now, what I like about that stack is look at the point per dollar. It's crazy considering Russ's price, but it's actually pretty. It's pretty good compared to maybe Russ Metcalf or something like that.
On the whole list, it's not even. It's at the low side for the entire list.
Yeah, it's almost making me think. Did we get the? It's almost making me think like I copied it over the wrong way. What's the prices on?
I'm looking at the. Well, you got the salary, 14.4.
Is that correct? I don't even know.
Yeah. I'm trying to see about the cheapies, but there aren't that many cheapies that are up here. That's part of the issue. And when you start to get there, that really does drop. But I think you did identify the number one game to stack this week. It stands out so much above and beyond all others that it's really hard to want to look elsewhere. You got to stack this game. It's the top, but there's a second game that really stands out to me from an excitement standpoint and from everything about it stands out. Again, let's hope no weather comes in and throws us a curveball. But
you like that Charger?
I love this game.
Like the Charger game?
One, what's that?
You like that Charger game? Is that the is that your next best game?
You gotta love the Charger game there.
Yeah,
I think. But I mean, coming back to Seattle, Buffalo, the beautiful thing is Diggs has such a high target share in his offense that whatever you're doing, it's just like Russell Lockett Diggs, Russell Metcalf Diggs, Allen Diggs Lockett, Allen Diggs Metcalf. Just go through it. 1, 2, 3. And build a few lineups like that, and then you start to think about the other plays in your lineup, and that's how I do it. I'm all right. Let me make 2 Wilson. All right, they're gonna Diggs. All right, let me make an Allen one, but I'm gonna include Diggs and Beasley, or Diggs and Moss, or Diggs and John Brown, who I think is gonna go very, very under-owned, considering he seems to be back and healthy and getting a lot of snaps again. John Brown, that's my dude this week in tournaments with that stack.
Let me just add one thing there. So it ties into what we were talking about. To me, the most important thing is to find the games, which is what we're doing now. Let's identify the games. That Seattle game looks good. The Raider game looks good. Then don't get yourself tied into the exact play with it right? So it's what we didn't do last week. Let's say we love that the San Fran Seattle game, but we got so locked in on Jimmy G. We're like, well, he's so much cheaper. We're going to use the Jimmy G stack and whatnot. Just play with it and see if it looks. Can I come up with something on both sides? Can I come up with a nice Josh Allen, Beasley, Lockett, or just keep playing with all these guys and see if it's something that works, even if it's not what you're going to use and it's not your initial thing. Because sometimes in retrospect we look back and we're like, oh shoot, I could have played Russell Wilson last week, and I was on that game.
So caught up in the value that we
Right.
forget. Value is one thing, but these guys got to go out and play, and they got to score the points. And if you play better players, they're more likely to get higher raw points. It's not just about the value. So let's talk about the second game that we just mentioned. And Burns, I'm assuming this is on your radar here for the Millie Maker. You've got the Chargers -1 at home, taking on a Raiders team that has given up quite a lot of points this season and can score. It's a really great setup for fantasy goodness. Herbert looks like the real deal out there. Somebody calls him, the next Mahomes. I've heard that about him. I'm not sure if I'm ready to anoint him that yet, but he looks great out there. And there are some really, really, one of the things that always gets me on a game, Burns, is listen, I already love Keenan Allen. Like, how do you not play him every week? Between him and Devontae Adams, like the targets are just like everywhere. They're like the helmets, in the theme song here. The targets are all over the place. But you could double stack this, and you could squeeze in Mike Williams. You can get a piece from the Raiders. How do you play this game, Burns?
I think you start right there with where you were going, was Keenan Allen. I think he has the best matchup in this game. And the trifecta on this would be with Mike Williams. That 3-man stack right there is, in this game, perfect. Start there. Or if you want to go off of that, go Hunter Henry. There's another trifecta stack there, or triple stack, and then run it back. Renfro's in a good spot this week, but Ruggs, who knows who's going to go off on that Las Vegas side. And then you got Waller.
By the way, could be Josh Jacobs too.
Very much so, yes.
I really like in this game, I like the running backs on both sides. Josh Jacobs is fine. I haven't really played Josh Jacobs since week 1, not once. But this might be the spot to go back to him if they keep the game close, and he seems healthy, and he's getting a lot of touches. So Chargers a little bit more vulnerable to the run than the pass. And the guy I like on the Chargers side is Jackson. Jackson, the running back. He's not really projecting as well as I thought he would. Justin Jackson, not projecting as well as I thought he would, but I think that might change. The Raiders are really bad against the run, and Justin Jackson got 5 targets last week, got a bunch of way more than Kelly, and this other dude, Tremaine Pope, seems out, or he's concussed. Maybe he won't play. If he doesn't play, I think they like Jackson more than Kelly right now. I like Jackson in that spot, and it's a little pay down option at running back that I'm really interested in this week. Does not look like it's going to be super high owned at this moment. Let's see where we have him in terms of the ownership projection. Yeah, he's way down here. I can't. Ownership 6%. So I mean, this is one of those times where I like a player a lot. He's in my first lineup that I made this week, and there he is at 6.5%. That's really low. Burns, 6.5% Jackson in a game we love. What the hell's going on there? Think that's going to hold?
It'll go up slightly, but not much more than that.
I like that situation. I'm wanting to try to pay down a little bit at running back to get a little different this week.
Yeah.
Because there's a group of wide receivers that I love on DraftKings. I'll show you here, but there's a whole group of wide receivers that I love in this 6K, in this like 6,500 to 7,200 range. Like if you just go basically start at Stephon Diggs, and Metcalf and Hopkins, fine. I'm not going to play Hopkins, but if you just start at Stephon Diggs, Jones, Tyreek Hill, Calvin Ridley now looks like he's going to play, but Keenan Allen Robinson's very playable. Lockett, There's more. I mean, it just keeps going and going. Or that's the group. I mean, this is your primary group here. Even Allen Robinson, Tyler Lockett, Will Fuller, you'd normally like to play in a week like this, and so yeah, there's a real nice group of 5 or 6 wide receivers there that you're pretty happy to pay up for, and all of them could outscore any one of these running backs. So that's a really interesting scenario. Yeah, Felipe's saying Chase Claypool, but fine. But my guy is Deontay Johnson. Still, I still like Deontay.
Yeah,
Claypool's fine, but I like Deontay a little bit more. But both are good. Both are really good.
And both QBs in this game they're right on point with how we look at it with the Vegas lines too. You always want to go with the favorites, but this is a pick 'em right now. So right now you can use both quarterbacks, triple stack them, run it back in this game. That would be perfect. And now if the lines tomorrow or before 1:00 on Sunday go towards one way, that might be an indication. Maybe you go more on that side, the favorite side with the quarterback more in terms of ownership versus, splitting the ownership across straight 50-50 with both quarterbacks. Maybe you go 60-40 or 70-30. Kind of like we do in MMA,
Yeah.
We'll do a 70 split
how much of that game do you want? Let's say you're doing 20 entry. A lot of guys do 20 entry who watch this, for example. I don't have people. Well, how many quarterbacks should I play? I would say, what about I'd run 20 entry and on a week like this, just focus 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Pick 2 games that you're really into and focus around those. So even if you run 4 different quarterbacks, but it's around 2 games, you're still keeping the player pool tight enough to try to win in a 20 entry using the Dom Station game stacking or approach. Nothing wrong with that either. People ask me how many quarterbacks. I don't know. Build around 2 games. I mean, a week like this, there are 2 games that stand out so much above the others.
Yeah.
Derek Carr is my least favorite, to be clear.
Yeah.
Of any of these quarterbacks. That's the one I'm least interested in. But overall, any of these 4 quarterbacks on these 2 games, I think work well. So I guess my next question will be, what else should we do this week, right? These 2 games stand out more than anything. I love them. Again, Russ, Josh Allen, Herbert, all good. Eber. What other games should I eat? Should I look at any other games, or should I ignore the rest of them and just build around this week? What do you say? Burns, does anything stand out to you from a Millie Maker build standpoint beyond these 2 games where you're like, yeah, I need a piece of that one? And maybe a little Mahomes, I guess, but I don't know. Where else are you looking to go here?
For me, I'm probably going to look at that Minnesota-Detroit game. 4-point spread, right? Is it 4 spread, or has that gone up?
Yeah, it's 4.5. We don't know if Stafford is playing or not as of this moment.
4 spread, 2.5 right now.
That's
John,
a stat. That's
play?
I don't know. I believe that's the Stafford line. So a lot of books you really can't get right now. So it's obviously going to be a much different line without Stafford.
Yeah, for sure.
Is this off the board right now? Let me check the odd station here. Is this
no? If you go, I'm not sure on the odd station, but if you just check a book, it's probably not going to show up.
Off. Okay,
yeah.
So the books are, because remember when that news came out, it was during the recording of the Vegas Line Show, and I'm like, dude, hold, let me place a bet real quick, and it didn't, and they were gone. So I don't know if let me check live odds here, but all right. What about if Stafford isn't playing? Are you interested in that game? If he's out,
makes it harder to actually like that game.
Between that risk and the Dalvin Cook, the only thing I like about it from a GPP point of view would be everybody's going to play Dalvin Cook. So what if Dalvin Cook doesn't do anything and they throw for 4 touchdowns? You know what I mean? Like that's just not the style of play that the Vikings do, but that would be it's kind of like playing the offense against the pitcher that everybody's using that day. Like, everybody's playing Cook. You might as well just play Thielen and, Jefferson instead, just to be different.
Yeah, Thielen's got the best matchup in this game. From a pure matchups perspective, he's got the best matchup. But no, I like that. They could attack this Detroit defense over the middle for sure.
Love that Minnesota. Guys like the Minnesotas. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with that. If this game, if Stafford goes, especially if Stafford doesn't go, I'm going to have much less of this game. But Thielen is the move. With Stafford in there, Thielen's the guy, I believe, on he's got a tremendous matchup
I play both of them
this week.
I don't think it matters.
You could do it. When you're talking about, most of these games, if we're targeting a game, more often than not, this should be a game worthy of having a 4-man stack, especially if you're playing in small, 20 lineups or something like that. Because we're looking for games that are going to pop 65 plus points. That's what we're looking for. So if you think this is a game that could get there, then and there's plenty enough skill players in this game where we can make a pretty good 4-man stack. I think the other game, and I think it's a little less. I think it's probably a little bit more scary to some people, but it's the Denver Atlanta game.
Yeah, I looked at it. I like the suggestion. Oh man, to play Drew Lock.
Well, that's the fear. But even Matt Ryan is like,
Yeah, it's not exciting me either. But
that doesn't really get the juices flowing. But it's a pretty good, it's a pretty good situation there. The line looks right, fairly high total. It's not my number one play, but I like it better than, let's say, the Jacksonville-Houston game, which also has a total that's similar, just because the probability of the blowout in that game might be a little higher than maybe the Atlanta-Denver game. And Atlanta's just basically played high-scoring, close games with everybody. So
because their defense is so bad and they just make the games close.
Denver scored a lot of points last week.
Yeah, I mean, Texans' defense is pretty bad too, but I mean, with the Jaguars rolling out, I looked at the Texans game also, Deshaun Watson. I'm like, how interesting can I really be in Deshaun Watson when he's going up against just a sack of fucking garbage for Jacksonville? The only reason that I'm still even having an inkling for Deshaun is because David Johnson is so bad that, most of the time he still needs to throw for touchdowns. Like, they can't just cruise and run touchdowns in. They have to throw for them.
What I like there is usually Watson's problem is he's just under pressure. It's a bad offensive line. This is as good a matchup as they're going to get with the Jacksonville defensive line. They don't really get a lot of pressure. So, it could be a situation where Watson could put up some pretty big numbers here in a game like this if he doesn't get pressure. That's been his problem with that team for the last few years. Is he's just under so much pressure.
Yeah, and in that
game, he does like to hold the football too. Deshaun Watson is a guy that it's his superpower and his curse that he will hold that football until the last 10th of the second.
Yeah, in that game on the Jacksonville side, I would say Robinson at running back is a must this week. Like,
really? But aren't they getting blown out? Like, do I really want a running back that's a heavy underdog in a blowout spot? As terrible as Texans defense is.
But he's still pass catching running back, and they go to him. I mean,
they do. Even in a game. Well, if you remember, they got destroyed by Miami earlier this season. But Robinson, he had a great day, and he's been doing. I mean, let's go to the matchups tool. Actually, it's better for the visual, but he's been doing his thing over there. So I don't know. I might have a hard time pulling that trigger on a heavy underdog, but it's a good transition because those are the games, right? There's nothing else really. Or I'll say this before we transition over. Yeah, Robinson, 71% rush count, 65% snap count on the season. It's good. It's good. I think Chris Thompson, though, is actually out. And so that increases him just a little bit even more. There's no one else there. I think Chris Thompson, if I remember correctly, is out this week. Not that he's a relevant player, but I mean, my one concern with Robinson is definitely going to be, he's Jaguars illness. Oh no, he's come back. He had the corona. Looks like he'll be back. So I don't know.
That'll lower Robinson's snap share then.
Yeah, it's not my favorite spot. I think there are better spots, but I want to talk running back in a second. But any other games that we want to mess with the passing game? I know I'll have some players. Pittsburgh. All right, we've got a setup here. It's not like a great one, but Pittsburgh has a high team total, 42 points. They definitely will run the football and take touchdowns via the run on this team. I don't think I want to stack it or do, and their defense is so good. I've been thinking about playing Deontay Johnson, though. Is the Pittsburgh defense and the running game so dominant here that we should stay away from all pass catchers?
Is the what that we want to stay away?
Is the Pittsburgh defense and 14-point favorite total, and the fact that they're a running team going up against a Dallas defense that can't stop anything, run or pass. You can do whatever you want.
Well, I don't like this game. Now, we talked about this with Dallas. Suddenly their defense is respectable because the offense is so bad, right? So the defense didn't get any better, but the defense probably wasn't as bad as it was. When you're scoring a ton of points, same problem with Seattle, right? When you score as quickly and as often as you do, you're just going to be susceptible to giving up more points. I've seen it year in, year out, and you see it when quarterbacks, generally when quarterback gets hurt or there's some sort of a quarterback switch. The classic case I talk about all the time is when Alex Smith was leading a really good San Francisco 49ers team, and that team was just a dominant defense, and then they switched mid-year, and they went to Kaepernick. I believe they increased their offensive points by 6 per game, but they were giving up 8 more per game on defense with Kaepernick in, right? So that defense went from like 17 points a game up to like 25 points a game when Cap was the quarterback. And that's what you're seeing with Dallas as well. They were scoring 30 plus points a game. Now they can't get to double digits. Suddenly the defense is giving up less. So all that said, I really don't like this game. Pittsburgh is a team that, like you said, they'll run the ball, they'll pound it, they'll get up 2-3 touchdowns, and then they'll kind of take the air out of the ball. Unlike, it's a different situation to me from the Mahomes situation last week. Again, we had all sorts of weather issues, which kind of moved me a little bit more on Mahomes last week in these other games. But Mahomes and, Roethlisberger is not Mahomes. Mahomes is that team. Ben is no longer the entire, he's not the entire offense, although that offense does not work without him. But he doesn't need to, he's not a guy putting up 40 points for us every week at the quarterback position. So what I could see easily happening in this game is just Pittsburgh, gets that lead. They get a 2-3 touchdown lead, and then they take the air out of the ball. I don't like any of the options in this game at all, except for the running back, maybe.
All right. Well, there's a warning off of Deontay. Maybe I have to rethink my cash love for him. We'll see. All right. Let's talk about running backs a little bit here. And I agree with a lot of your points, by the way. They'll lean on the run if they can. That's just what Pittsburgh will do, much more so than a team like Kansas City, who just does whatever the hell they want, and they will lean on the run sometimes. We have to see. All right, let's talk about the running back position here this week a little bit. And we already kind of dived in to the very top end of the range, talking about McCaffrey versus Dalvin Cook and how, hey, listen, you can get them both in your lineup. That's great. I don't know if that's going to be feasible. I like them both. I think Dalvin Cook coming in as the chalk, with McCaffrey coming in as the really elite pivot off of chalk, because he's fucking Christian McCaffrey, and this dude puts up numbers.
And remember, he was like 10.5 in salary before, right? So
we were paying it last season. We're 10K, 10.5. We're like, all right, gotta pay it. He would put up 28, be like, that, not going to win a tournament with that, but still had to pay it.
Wasn't he 10K week 1 this year?
I believe so.
Yeah, he came right back in, priced all the way up. So they have priced him down a little bit, I guess, for this, but not really. But I think more interestingly, it's just like you'd always prefer Christian McCaffrey over Dalvin Cook. Like they have long histories, these two players, and Christian McCaffrey gets more passing game work than Dalvin Cook. He just does. Dalvin Cook can have a very good game and put up 100 yards, 2 receptions, and get a touchdown. And he scores 21, and that's a great game. Christian McCaffrey, if he got 21, it's like, oh, he had a terrible game. Like, what the hell happened? Oh, he only got 7 catches. Oh, that was terrible. You know what I mean? Like, these are different guys. Christian McCaffrey. Now, the matchup is way better for Dalvin Cook. But he's Christian McCaffrey. It doesn't matter. Now, Derrick Henry's going up against Chicago. I don't even know if I would call this a pivotable situation. Chicago is not that great against the run, but I don't really see messing with that myself. John, any interest here? And how about you, Burns?
There's interest here for me on
Derrick Henry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because no one's on him?
Yeah, I mean, I like the spot. The Bears I think that's how they're going to be attacking the Bears. I think they're going to have to run the ball. It's not my favorite if we're going to grade the top three, but he's definitely playable here, and it's one of those I'm totally fine with if that's a pivot that you want to. If you're going with a lineup and you're going to go with one of these expensive running backs, and you want to be a little bit different, I never mind being a little different with Derrick Henry, and I know the Bears defenses look pretty good, but I think they're going to be susceptible to the run here.
Burns, when you attack the Millie Maker, are you trying to be like, all right, I've identified the chalk running backs and I ain't using any of these fuckers? Or do you mix it up? What's your mindset when you're doing that?
Well, the way I look at chalk is I'll go field ownership, or I actually like to go a little bit under it, 10, 15% under the field ownership. So if, say, I don't know, say it's 35% Dalvin Cook, just an example, I'd be 25%. This year we've had much higher bust rate on these running backs than I like to actually admit, but it's there. And
we can admit it. The bust rate has been massive. Yeah.
So I actually pivot more towards, like John just said, I actually like Derrick Henry a lot this week. My expected points, fantasy points for him is actually higher than my projection for him. So I'm moving a lot of shares to Derrick Henry this week. King Henry will roll this week. But, that's kind of how I approach it. But with my running backs, I'll take more stands with running backs than I will any other position. I'll take it with the top tier, like, our 6K guys and wide receivers a little bit too. Someone asked me last week, how do I approach wide receivers? I don't ever get above 30-35% on wide receiver ever. So
I do go above 30-35 to be personally. I've done that, but only when it's Devontae Adams or Keenan Allen this week.
Yeah, and so I'll do it more with running backs and quarterbacks than I'll do with the other positions. But like I said, target in my Millie Maker specials, target running backs that are favored before you start to target the non-favored running backs. Same thing with quarterbacks and same thing with tight ends. Wide receivers, we don't have to target the favorites as much. There's not a trend there that says that the favorites are going to blow up every week like the running backs and the quarterbacks and the tight ends. Actually, the tight ends and the quarterbacks are pretty much right in line. We've had 10 slates of Millie Maker slates since week 1, and 8 of those 10 slates, favorite quarterback has been on the winning Millie Maker lineup. Same thing with the tight ends. Running backs is a little bit less as a percentage, but it still shows that we want running backs that are on favored teams much more than we want them from a non-favorite team or an underdog. So target them first. And you're going to see, when you do that, you're going to see your lineups go up the leaderboards more than if you targeted the non-favorites.
Take the favorites, man. It seems so simple.
Yeah, the Burns is right on to add tight end as well. And what the reason when I do that analysis, which is pretty similar to the analysis Burns did, and we see that with the quarterback and the wide receivers, is because oftentimes, because of the correlation between the quarterback and the wide receivers, that the spread, they kind of negate each other. So a -5 quarterback favorite is often going to show up in lineups with the wide receiver on the other team, and also the quarterback on the other team probably had a pretty good day as well, and that's sort of balancing it out. So when you look at it, the spreads, that's why we're looking for games that are going to be close. With the running back situation, it's rare that you're going to have the running back from the other team join, have 2 running backs from the same game, opposite teams. You don't see it often, but what we do see is that the favorites hit more often than not. They're also high-scoring game. Like, don't think we're looking for 42-point totals necessarily, because while they're going to run the ball a lot, we still want high-scoring games. They're just usually not as high-scoring as the quarterback wide receiver type stacks. They're usually just under that. They're going to average like 55 points a game as opposed to 65 points a game. So just keep that in mind.
And also, nothing's an end all be all written in stone thing. We saw last week that Dalvin Cook certainly wasn't the favorite in that game, and so it's not written in stone, these rules, but they tend to work more often than not according to the numbers. So let's look at this next group, and I'll mention a couple of heavily favored running backs to keep with the theme, and as we start to come down in salary in the under 7K range, and again, I know Burns, you mentioned James Robinson. You could throw him in there, although he's a heavy underdog in this spot. Two guys that I like a lot, Chase Edmonds and James Conner, are both sitting right around the same salary. Chase Edmonds has been awesome anytime he's gotten the full workload. Miami, absolutely a run funnel offense. We like Arizona defense in the spot after Tua looked as bad as he did. Again, I think Tua will look better this week, but I don't know. Why would I know that? I don't know shit. I don't have information. I just think, I think he'll look better this week. I just do. But Chase Edmonds has looked amazing every time he started. He is like Christian McCaffrey. He gets a lot of passing game work. He is a shifty runner, and he's going to be chalk, I think, here for good reason. And the other guy is James Conner, who we just mentioned. Like, what if Dallas wants to, or Steelers, as they smashing the Cowboys, they want to just sit back and chill and like Netflix and chill and score some touchdowns and do their thing. And, there's always a little Benny Snell vulture worry here. But what do you think of these two guys? And how do they fit into the mix this week it looks even ownership. I would have thought they'd be actually higher owned, and we'll see what happens as we get closer to game day. But what do you think of these two that look like they're flying maybe just a little bit under the radar? Adam.
I actually like James Conner a lot this week. His expected points in my model is higher than his actual projection. So that's kind of a big indicator for me. Like, if the model's telling me his expected points are going to be higher than my actual projection, I'll look at that and I'll move to have more ownership in a particular play like that. So, there's only a few on my model where that is, and he's one of them, as well as King, Derrick Henry. But one other one, and he's not in a very good position, is Ezekiel Elliott this week, where the expected points are probably I actually have him 8 points higher for expected fantasy points than his actual projection. So
gotta adjust that model for the new terribleness of this offense. You gotta make a little tweak there.
Yeah.
No quarterback.
Yeah, that's the thing with that one. But I agree with you. I think they're both in really good spots. It may just be an ownership thing. If you can't go to one or the other, maybe you split your ownerships across both, or we do our 60-40, 55-45 type thing and go with it that way, or with your actual ownership that you want to have. And
I think the reason these guys are going to be a little lower owned is because of the shiny toys up in the Dalvin Cook level and Christian McCaffrey. And I don't think that the way lineups will be constructed this week will really allow for, just paying up everywhere. You got to have sacrifices, especially on DraftKings. FanDuel's a little bit different. FanDuel gave us some bargains. FanDuel priced Chase Edmonds down low. A lot of these, you could do some things on FanDuel that you just can't do on DraftKings this week. Makes me interested in playing on FanDuel because, again, a lot of people don't take advantage of that. On FanDuel, I absolutely just am not as interested in paying all the way up for McCaffrey or any of these guys. Dalvin Cook, not as much, because the Chase Edmonds of the world are 5,900 compared to 90. Like, there are thousands and thousands less. Whereas here, Chase Edmonds is 7K, the other one's 8,500, it's 1,500 difference. On FanDuel, you're saving like 4,500 or 3,500, a massive number. I think it's 4,500, maybe 3,500. Nonetheless, it's more than double the savings of what you get on DraftKings for paying down. So let's continue down, because running back is usually my favorite thing to do in running back, guys. I like to really hone in on a few that I love. I will go all in on a running back. My preference is to go all in. I would rather have a slate where I feel so confident in a running back that I'll just put him in every lineup and then, make or break. And there are some cheapies that I might get to there this week, including, and that's why I'm mentioning him because Chris Carson popped up here. If Chris Carson is out and if Carlos Hyde is out, DJ Dallas at $5K, so cheap. Got a ton of work, passing game work last week. In the ultimate matchup, Bills not that good versus the run. If this is the case, John, can I lock button DJ Dallas and play him in every lineup? 150 lineups.
You can do whatever you want, man.
Thank you.
Well, I'd be doing that. No, what I typically do with the running back situation is I like to get 3 or 4 running backs and then force them, at least one of them, into every lineup. Hasn't been the greatest strategy this year because running backs it's just been an unusual year with the wide receivers doing better week in, week out. That's usually been like the strategy now has been what.
Pick your favorite wide receiver, go all in.
It's really
mix up the running back. That's really what's going on this year. At some point, by the way, it's week 9. We got to accept we're more than halfway through the season.
Yeah, I stopped. I did not lock any running backs in last week. This week, though, I like. I might have to revert. I do like some of these running backs. I like Chase Edmonds quite a bit. You got, like you said, DJ Dallas in this situation. It's a high scoring game with a potentially high scoring game with a. We're getting a good price on the running back on the favorite in that game. Yeah, I like that as well. I wouldn't lock button. For 150 lineups, I'm not going to lock button because there's some good options. The one problem you have when you lock button in a guy, especially if you're lock buttoning in only a cheap guy or expensive guy, is then it's going to mess with maybe the diversity of your lineups a little bit. So I'll try to mix in some cheap and some expensive. If the week, it's going to depend on the week, because then I'm not going to have all expensive stacks with my cheaper running back and vice versa the other way. So just think about that from a diversity standpoint. The more you lock in, the less diverse your lineups might be, which is perfectly fine as well if that's what you want. But if that's not the goal that you have, if you want some diversity, you may need some lineups with cheap running backs, some lineups with expensive.
Yeah, I'm a lock button guy when the situation is there. I like to do that. I feel like if I can eliminate some of the variables and choices across the lineups, then I can really do a much better job of diversifying the rest of them. Especially though, only when it's a cheap guy. I don't think you can generally lock button a 9K player. I don't care who the hell they are, unless it's, Mike Thomas last year or pretty much Devontae Adams this year, in a good matchup. But I don't normally like to lock button the very expensive players because they don't need to just have a good game. They need to destroy everybody else and send them, have their bloods flow with the streets flow with the blood of their enemies when they're finished with them. You know what I mean? And you can't just get, if I pay all the way up for Christian McCaffrey and he puts up 26, I kind of blew it. That's not good. It didn't ruin your lineup, but you ain't winning the tournament with a player getting you 3x at that much of your salary. So it doesn't get you there. But some of these cheaper guys I do like. Now, there are some names here I think that everybody's viable, but there's a lot of warts on them, right? This next level at the running back position, Josh Jacobs just hasn't done it this year. He's in a great spot. Just hasn't done it. And so, there's a little bit of, I don't know about him. Todd Gurley, for me, also. I mean, I'm going to ask you about these guys, but Todd Gurley, for me, he's just not, it's a good matchup, but I don't know. He doesn't float my boat, never gets a lot of yardage. He's very touchdown dependent. Hilaire is splitting touches with Le'Veon Bell, just not enough volume there for me. Jonathan Taylor, Lord knows what's going on with him, but hold on. I got a song for, should I play Jonathan Taylor? No. When Jordan Wilkins is replacing you. You're not good. It was a mistake. I don't know what the fuck is going on with. Is he hurt? Oh, his ankle's hurt. Bullshit. I don't know what's going on with that guy. I'm not playing him. Hell no. David Johnson, David Montgomery. Man, this guy shows up on my list every week, and I'm like, David Montgomery. I start looking at him. I'm like, and then I watch tape, and I'm like, he looks so shitty. But all of the offensive linemen are hurt. Every one of them. They're all hurt. I can't play fucking Montgomery. When the offensive line is healthy, this guy still sucks. Now 4 of them are out. John, do you even pay attention to shit like that? Or are you just like, I wasn't playing him anyway. I don't care who's out.
Well, their offensive line sucks so bad. I mean, that's
maybe the other guys are better.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go with they're not, but I think Montgomery's a better player than That's the problem with the NFL. It's so hard to figure out sometimes to evaluate talent. It's really not even helpful sometimes in what we do because it's about situations, about usage. Yeah, Montgomery to me. I'm not on board with that. Now, David Johnson, right below there, I like that play quite a bit this week. David Johnson against Jacksonville fits a lot of the criteria we're looking for as far as spread and total. And yeah, I mean, weak defense. You could totally see David Johnson. I could see David Johnson being part of a game stack there with Watson.
Defense. Yeah, mix him with that Texans. We like Texans. But I mean, Hunter makes a good point here too. Like, why are we still waiting for this asshole to blow up? He never does. He's been in a lot of good matchups, and maybe this week.
I've seen him in better spots, but I mean that if we're talking about Montgomery, like the excuse was, well, he had Cohen. Now we've seen him without Cohen, and hasn't gotten any better for us. Like, I don't know. There's just so many better options here this week. I think at running back that Montgomery's not the one for me.
Sexier games too. Burns, you mentioned Zach Moss. He's a little bit of a pay down. I'm not in love with the snap share for Moss. He still is 50%, single 48. It's not. It's very much a 50-50 split here. I still have concerns about Moss. To where you can play him, but he's going to be the best thing Moss has going, Burns, is that he seems to be the guy they bring in when they're getting ready to score. I don't know why, they just do that. So he seems to have a little more touchdown equity than Singletary, but I'm not as in love with maybe that play, just because I feel like it's very thin in terms of the volume.
I agree with you. I'm probably not going to play him at all this week.
Oh.
Last week he was a great play, because of the weather.
Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so it was more of a last week thing, and he did smash
this week. Not so much. I mean, is Seattle the greatest against the run? No, but I don't see that game playing out that way. If anything, Buffalo's going to have to.
They're going to throw a lot. I think so too.
Stay within that game, so. No,
I totally agree. I don't think this is a target the run game. Now I'm seeing a little O next to Carlos Hyde's name, which maybe means he's out this week. It's not a lock, but that would be interesting. And Carson, if Carson is out, then my boy DJ Dallas, right here, 5K. There's a couple of cheapies right here. I don't think a lot of people like to use 2 cheap running backs. I don't mind it this week at all. I do not mind being different. I'm always comfortable using cheap running backs. I just like doing that. And DJ Dallas came off of a great game. I just want to actually bring up his box score because it's hard to really appreciate it when you just see the snap count. 5 targets, 18 carries against San Francisco. Now, as bad as that San Francisco team has been from a passing game point of view, they're still a good run defense. They held Aaron Jones yesterday to 12 fantasy points. Now he gets Buffalo, who can be run on. If you're going to throw to me, and you're going to be part of this crazy, awesome game, and you're going to give him 20 carries, I'm going to load up on this dude all in. That's just what I'm going to do. I'm waiting to find out if Chris Carson, and by the way, if Carson plays, I like Carson. Not all in. Can't go all in on Carson. Gets hurt in game a lot, but I'll be all in. But let's talk about another guy I like a lot, and I want your opinion on this. And I mentioned him before, Justin Jackson. I know the stats. 17 carries, 89 yards, 5 targets, 3 receptions. And that was in a game, John, where Tremaine Pope took 7 targets. This is a Chargers team that likes to throw to their running backs. This guy comes out of nowhere. 7 targets. Did not practice due to a concussion. Missing practices. In the protocols. Where do those 7 targets go?
Yeah, I like Jackson here. All the reasons you just said. I mean, they love to throw the ball to the running backs. I mean, he gets his share anyway, and so I like it. I think it's a good spot. Denver. I don't know. I always feel like Denver's got this perception of kind of low scoring, defensive type of games, but we could target their defense here, and we could target their defense against the run. We spoke about before. This is one of the sneakier games. Maybe did I say Denver? I'm sorry. They played Denver last week, and I'm thinking of the of that game. But but this is definitely one of the sneakier games I think that we could target in 4-man stacks. And yeah, I like this. The problem I'm having here is I like Jacobs as well, and I don't like to play them. As we spoke about before, I don't like to play them.
Yeah, you can't really play. You don't want to play both together. Well, maybe you make a rule, not to allow them both together. But remember, Jackson is cheap, and he gets passes, and he's used in the passing game. Now, here's the risk, and this is my worry with Jackson. Number one, it looks like Tremaine Pope will be out. And by the way, Scott Kujawa just is saying that Carson and Hyde are ruled out for this week. If that's the case, I'm really happy we're hearing it on Friday because
Carson, according to Roto World, Carson is out for week 9. But
there we go.
I see nothing on Roto World for Carlos Hyde.
We will find out. But if Hyde and Carson are ruled out, we get to go to the DJ Dallas Dance Club this week. And Hunter, you are correct. Somebody needs to make me an all-in video so I can throw some. I need that. I don't know. I need a siren, something going on.
Remember, the more you get these, right? So then the higher, obviously, the DJ Dallas ownership goes up now. But it also changes how the field's lineups look, and it puts more weight. Now the more expensive guys at the running back position become a bigger leverage play. Yep. So you have to look at it. You have to look at it in those, right? So we don't dislike those guys anymore. But you're going to get more lineups with cheaper running backs, which means more expensive wide receivers. Just to pivot, you could. That's why I said earlier, make yourself some lineups that are a little bit different than what you initially went in thinking. So make yourself some Henry lineups, or make yourself some, and just see where that brings you, because they're going to be quality lineups. They're just not what everyone else is looking at.
It changes the flavor of lineup construction. This is what we talk about. So, John, taking this all the way back to what you said about your Garoppolo super chalk stack from last week in high dollar. We were able to identify along the course of the week that was going to be the chalk construction. Everybody was kind of on that same mix. You played Lockett. This one played Metcalf. You made the sharp guy pivoted over to Dalvin Cook. They wound up cashing off of Derrick Henry. But that was the flavor of the week was going to be that general construction. Now with DJ Dallas, I think the flavor of the week changes. So we can try to figure it out. What are people going to do? They're going to play Dallas. They're going to try to squeeze Dalvin Cook in here, and maybe they'll go either with the middling guy, as you said, the Josh Jacobs, or maybe we go right back down here and play Jackson, and that's your start. So how do I make this? I think this will be in my mind, this will be how I build a lot of lineups. I'm not sure if it's going to be chalk because I don't know if Jackson's going to be chalk. But if I thought that was the chalk and I wanted to get different, I might say, you know what? Let me just put these two cheapies together, and instead of going chalk with that third high-priced quarterback, running back, and then trying to fill out the rest, maybe I'll go throw a wide receiver in here, and maybe I'll kind of build different by loading up on all of these wide receivers that we kind of like in this salary range, and build it differently. So really interesting ways to get unique. One last running back I want to talk about before we sort of say goodbye to everybody here. Swift. I don't know what to do with Swift. I don't know what to do here. It's a good matchup. He's still not getting enough work for me to, but people ask me about him. Last time I said don't play Swift, he went off for 30 points, and I look like a fucking idiot. So that was a Millie Maker one right there. Yeah, Burns talking about playing Swift, and I'm like, how come everybody's asking me about Swift? Like, what am I missing here? And then I'm like, I don't really like Swift. And then he went off, but he did it on very low volume. In fairness, that one game he got a little bit more volume than usual. But this game sets up. I don't know. I mean, he's the underdog. Can I just ignore him?
Stay off Swift for me.
You're off Swift. Not enough
Burn.
Here's the thing about Swift in this offense. And this is the thing that you got to understand about Swift in this offense, is that they use Swift primarily as the pass catching back in this offense. He's not the between the numbers guy. Okay. He's not going to be the guy that piles forward for 5 yards here, 3 yards there. That's Adrian Peterson in this offense. Okay. The reason why DeAndre Swift was such an amazing play when he went off and was in the Millie Maker and skillful roll base, had him in his 6th place lineup, was Jacksonville is a sieve against pass catching running backs. Okay. That's where they suck. So you have to look at this kind of stuff when you go to look at these guys. Now, can DeAndre Swift go off against Minnesota? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, Minnesota held Jamal Williams last week. You know, he only had 13 DK fantasy points last week. So don't forget that. I mean, DeAndre Swift, he's still a rookie. So play the matchups. Play Swift against poorest defenses against pass-catching backs. Do not play him in this matchup. Yes, it looks like a great matchup, but he's a pass-catching back. If you really want to go to this type of matchup for a running back, go to Adrian Peterson
or David Johnson.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say that's great stuff, and you're pushing me more on
now
David
I'm gonna have
Johnson
to play
with
David Johnson. Shit. By the way, this does say that Hyde and Hyde is out as well. So we are looking at DJ Dallas. I need like the DJ Dallas dance. Wasn't there some creepy ass movie about like some strip club called the DJ Dallas strip club? I don't know. There was something. It's in my head with Matthew McConaughey. I don't know.
That was the Dallas not strip club. That was
something.
That was what the
it was like a porn movie or with Matthew McConaughey. I didn't see it.
Yeah, no.
Anywho, that's it, man. I don't think there's anything going on here below 5K that we can mess with. J.K. Dobbins looks like he's getting a better role with Baltimore, but I'm not screwing with Colts defense in general. It's not like a team I want to mess with. Yeah, there you are, Dallas Buyers Club. It's not a team I want to mess with. Singletary, no. Gallman, no. Josh Kelly, I guess if you have like a crazy tournament mindset, Josh Kelly might.
If you wanted to play J.K. Dobbins this week, this would probably be the week for him. Indianapolis is 25th versus pass catching backs. J.K. Dobbins in this offense is the pass catching back. They use Gus Edwards between the tackles. So if you wanted a low-owned play, J.K. Dobbins will be it. And he may be even written up this week in the Millie Makers edition.
Oh, there we go. He's going to make the Millie Maker. He might make the list. Listen, no one's going to.
Baltimore's.
Oh my God! I didn't even know what this movie's about. He's like, it's about fucking. Oh, oops. Yeah, not interested.
Baltimore favored in the game by 2.5, which is a good line for pass catching backs. So keep that in mind. Is J.K. Dobbins going to blow up like DeAndre Swift did that week? Who knows? But there's a possibility. Could you utilize 10% on him in ownership? Sure. And be over the field? Probably. And that's kind of where I left it with Swift that week too. Like 10% on him. Yeah, sure.
Season Long swears by J.K. Dobbins, says he is by far the best running back in this draft class. Him and Swift were the two best. He's been all over this since March. Well before the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I watched J.K. Dobbins for with Ohio State for like a few years. The guy is an amazing running back. Like he because I got to watch Carlos Hyde, I got to watch Ezekiel Elliott when they were with Ohio State. This guy he's in a league of his own. Like he was awesome for Ohio State, but this is different footballs too. So
yeah, they haven't given the opportunity yet. I think the Ravens do disservice to fantasy production from the running back position when they're on there because they want to do the three-way split, and they all have pretty good guys. So, all right, guys, I think let's wrap it up here. That will do it for the WolfPack for this week, week 9. Great stuff as always, man. I love learning. I love the stuff we did, especially at the beginning today, where we kind of talked a little bit of mindset, approach, and strategy. To me, that's way more than if we think that David Johnson or DeAndre Swift is in a better spot this week. I think understanding the approach to lineup construction and how to diversify and how to build a lineup in a smart way is just something that you take with you every week of the season. And then you realize, don't be overconfident even in your takes. That will help you along the way. Yeah, we might lean one way or another way. Had we really been thinking about this even stronger last night, we should have been all over, WR2. And people ask, why did you stack, put WR2 in the captain role? And it's like, because I always do. You know what I mean? Like, that should be your process. I'm going to ask Bobby Wow, because I'm definitely going to try to interview him about that big win. But I'm going to ask him, do you just always do that? And I'm sure he'll be like, yeah, this is my process. I always take the WR2 and I put 5% in there because you never know. It's like, oh, you don't even care who it is? Nope. I just put whoever it is. Smart move.
He kind of explained it a little bit last year when he wrote the chapter 3 for my book, the ebook, and he kind of explained it pretty intently in that chapter. That's all about Bobby Klinkert. So members, go back and reread that if you really want to get inside Bobby Klinkert's head. There you are, right there. There's a full chapter on him winning the FanDuel Millie Maker last year, and he utilizes that strategy every lineup he makes. So, I'm
going back to read chapter 3 also now. Now I'm like, what did he say before we do that? Yeah, I want to go back and read chapter 3, guys. If everybody's watching, this is DFS Army, so go on the main homepage and click on the link to the Shark Attack Millie Maker book. It's right there on the right panel on basically every page on the website. So when people ask me I can't find it, that's just because you ain't looking. It's on every panel as a matter of fact, where is it? It's always right there. Click it. Shark Chronicles.
Yeah. And for all the members here that are on this pod, the Millie Maker Weekly edition will be coming out tomorrow morning. So I'm hoping to post it real early tomorrow morning, so I'll be up at 4:30 to write.
You're the man.
So I always write it on Saturday mornings simply because more information is available to me. Lines change overnight and into the early morning hours, so that is valuable information for you guys. But you guys, one point of advice for you guys is please watch the lines over the course of when you create your lineups. Lines can change in a moment's notice. So take that into consideration, and you may actually get onto a play that you may not have already been on where you shift some ownership over to, and it could actually potentially lead you to a winning lineup. So just keep that in line.
Great advice. Very important to watch the line movement. And yeah, that's pretty much true for me too. On that same note, I'll be finishing up my FanDuel side of my notes tonight. Probably finishing up right about when Burns is waking up. I like to do a lot of that. I work on my stuff overnight for the most part. It's the only time when I get hours of quiet. For me, I get waking up at 4:30. Family man too. Everybody has his way. I do my stuff like after midnight because it's the only time I have quiet on my head. I will be back tomorrow, of course, with the Players Club. So for everybody, as you know, I will be back tomorrow, usually around 1-ish, maybe 2. Midday. Players Club, we're going to break down the entire slate. We'll go through it player by player, position by position. Maybe we'll get some all-in graphical music between now and then because I got an all-in play. And John, as always, great to have you on. You're out there crushing it. You're giving out your picks over in Sportsbet Army. Guys, if you're watching this, I forgot to mention this the whole time. Everybody here is DFS Army members, so I'm going to give you the secret code. If you want to get it on Sportsbet Army, number one, 2 things. Number one, you're getting John's picks. You're getting Ryan's picks. They're smashing. MMA picks. Sports betting is not hard. You just place the bet. But a big focus we have at Sportsbet Army is teaching the approach to betting on sports. What do you need to look for? How do you understand EV? All the stuff. John is doing a full course on this for everybody who's over there. The other thing I would say for you guys, if you're interested in it, DM John or Anthony P, or you can even DM me if you have to. We have a deal with a couple of offshore books that you can get signed up for if you're not in one of the states that has localized sports betting, where we've got a deal. They give you all kinds of free money. It's like a $500 or $1,000 deposit match, something crazy. They hook it up for our members. I play there. I play on 2 overseas sites right now because I'm in New York and I can't play on DraftKings or FanDuel. And we give you a couple free months of Sportsbet Army when you sign up, so that you don't only don't pay for the Sportsbet Army service, which is only for DFS Army subscribers, only $30 a month. It's literally nothing. But I'd rather you put the money in your betting account and bet it and have fun with it. So they're able to sponsor it. Fine by us. Let's do it. DM my Statsational. You can DM Anthony P. Fight on 2016, or text in 0332. Any of those guys in Slack, they'll show you how to do this process where you get the free couple of months of Sportsbet Army, and you can bet on sports from wherever you are. Again, I bet on sports here. It's great. There's one site I prefer. Bet Online is the one I like. It's the sharper lines, but we have a couple of them that we work with, and you get free. And John, you get John's bets. Who the fuck wouldn't want that? I follow them. The hell do I know? Follow.
Yeah. Hey, Kev, another thing members should be looking at is John's power rankings. Those things are spot on. Oh,
I talk about that on every podcast. I mean, if you're not using the power rankings, you're crazy. Use that for your lineup decisions. I do. It's one of my favorite tools that we have. So, yeah, good stuff. Let's call it there, guys. John, Statsational, thank you for being on. Adam Burns, thanks for being on. Burns' kid, how you doing, little man? We will be back next time and next week for another WolfPack. WolfPack out. Take care, everyone.
Got the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing. We be roof up in the Slack chat with the coach. We be these puzzles talking the pop. He ain't live when he live. Helmet's casket. You can see a helmet. I see a helmet. The helmet. Second place. Fifth place. Eighth place. 15, 16, 20. So many helmets. You got blur vision.